Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt, former Missouri Attorney General. Great to see you, Senator. Thanks for being here. First of all, I have to ask you about the Supreme Court decision today. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a victory for the Constitution and the rule of law. It was, I think most legal scholars agree that this is probably where the Supreme Court would land or should land, making sure the president and a robust executive has this level of independence and immunity for official acts. But you still see, again, this very radical view in Justice Sotomayor, which may be her last sentence she writes as a justice. We'll find out, I suppose, if she steps down or not, calling, this is chilling for democracy. I'll tell you what's chilling is when you have somebody like Jack Smith. Everybody knows his MO. He's the guy they call out of the bullpen when you want to go after a political opponent. That's exactly what Joe Biden did here. This is all about election interference, and the Supreme Court called him on it. And I think it's a very important decision long term. I think President Obama ought to be thrilled about this ruling, quite frankly, because if you can go after former presidents, this lawfare will never end. And I think this was a big win for not just President Trump, but for our country today.
Well, something else that is chilling is not just what happened with these, the 51 former spooks coming out with disinformation right before the election in 2020 might have affected the results of the election. And now it turns out a couple of them were actually still on contract with the CIA. That's at least what is being suspected by a number of members of Congress. Your thoughts about that, and eventually we'll talk about how we break up this political cabal inside the intel agencies. But first, your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's a chilling report, and quite frankly, another brick in the wall of a really terrifying episode of how folks at the highest levels of government tried to interfere and did interfere with the election in 2020. They were hell-bent on making sure Donald Trump didn't get reelected, and you saw this group of so-called intel leaders, 51 of them, sign on to this letter saying the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, led, by the way, by Anthony Blinken, who happens to be now, guess what, the Secretary of State. So a lot on the line for him, a lot on the line for the country, but they were willing to do just about anything to bulldoze our Constitution and claim everything was Russian disinformation. It's important to remember, David, in October of 2019, the FBI had that laptop. They knew it was real. The FBI went to social media companies in 2020 and said, this is a Russian hack and leak operation. The CIA, we now find out, was doing the same thing, including members of the Senate and Congress being warned about this too. So they were willing to go through great lengths here, again, to dispel any notion that this laptop was real. Of course, we know it's now real, and it influenced the election. To what degree, we'll never know. But the point is, this is really scary that folks like this, with this kind of power, were willing to lie to affect the election. It's all coming out now. And by the way, if you didn't have the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit, you didn't have the Twitter files, you didn't have these investigative hearings, all this stuff would still be in the dark. It's
incredible. But the thing is, this happened under President Trump's watch. President Trump was the president when all this is, and it leads to questions about how you depoliticize this cabal that could be working against a sitting president. John Ratcliffe, the former DNI, the former director of national intel, was on with Maria yesterday. I just want to play a clip of Ratcliffe and get your reaction. Roll tape.
The two biggest election interference campaigns in our country took place in 2016 and 2020 to stop Donald Trump. And it wasn't by China, it wasn't by Russia, it wasn't by Iran, it was by political actors on the left within our own institutions like the CIA, within the intelligence community, within the FBI, within the Department of Justice. And I can just tell you, that is mission number one for Donald Trump when he takes office in January of 2025.
So, Senator, how does Donald Trump go about cleaning up this mess if he's elected president?
I think he has to. One of the reasons why I'm really excited, why I was one of the first endorsers for President Trump in this cycle, was I think he's going to fundamentally dismantle the administrative state. And to your point on that clip, in 2016, they were willing to spy on an American, the major political candidate of the Republican Party. They were willing to do that to stop him. In 2020, we just talked about this Hunter Biden laptop, their willingness to lie about that and say it was a Russian hack and leak. Now, look, there's nothing they won't do. They are literally trying to throw their political opponent in jail for the rest of his life to prevent him from being president again. So I think there is a reckoning coming. We got to clean house. You got to make sure that these bureaucrats understand the role that they're supposed to play in our system. We believe we're a constitutional republic. We send people there. We can send them home or we can send them back. This sort of permanent Washington, believing that they're the guardians of our democracy, is ridiculous. The people are sovereign in this country. They're the ones that determine who is making decisions on their behalf. And this idea that you have this cadre, this cabal of bureaucrats that know better than everybody else, I think that's what ultimately needs to get disrupted. The tables need to be flipped over and get back to who we are again, which is that we the people get to decide these important matters, not these folks that most people will never know their names, but they play an outsized role in people's lives. I think you saw some of that with the Chevron being overturned. That's a big part of it. I think what President Trump will do when he comes in, we're getting back to a place hopefully where we can turn the corner and put the people back in charge as opposed to permanent Washington, these bureaucrats.
Well, and I got to say, thanks to you and a lot of others who pulled back the curtain and showed us what was really going on, because first you have to shine a spotlight on it before you can clean it up. As the roaches are scattering, it's getting that spotlight on them to begin with. That's the important part, and you had a lot to do with it.
That's right. David, can I make one more quick point? Quickly, the veil has been lifted. You saw these folks now who've been lying about Joe Biden's health. They've been exposed. Right. The same people that were lying about that lied about the laptop. They lied about COVID. They lied about these political prosecutions. And now's the time, I think, that Americans have a chance to really weigh in November.
Senator Eric Schmitt, have a wonderful July 4th. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.